This is the Rocket City Retirement Show with Cris Wallace. Cris loves educating people in person and over the airwaves. Whether it's retirement planning, investing, tax, or legacy, Cris prides himself in helping protect what matters to you. This is the Rocket City Retirement Show.
Welcome to the Rocket City Retirement Show. I'm your host, Cris Wallace, certified financial planner, and here with me today are financial advisors Graham Bauer and Richard Constantine, who is also a certified financial planner. As always, we are here each week to discuss all things financial planning, specifically centered around retirement planning. That's what we do. We got a great show lined up today, as we always do for everybody. And if you join part way through the show, you can always hop over to Spotify or Apple Podcast and listen to the entire episode. And if you want the episode to always show up at the top of your feeds, just be sure and follow the show. So Graham, Richard, welcome to the show. Glad to have you back this week. The first thing I want to jump into personally is I want to talk about GDP numbers that are going to be released this week. And looking at the Atlanta Fed, they're actually predicting GDP to come in right around 3.5%. So well above where we might think it would come in terms of the general population. But the Atlanta Feds are talking about GDP coming in over 3, which would be good for the economy. It would show some potential growth there for sure. And then I want to quickly just run over year-to-date market returns, and then we're going to get on to our show topics because we have a lot of material to unpack today. So year-to-date market returns as of last Friday, again, today's Tuesday. We always record on Tuesday. The S&P was up 11.21%. The Dow is up 3.66%, and the NASDAQ is up 12.72%. And then our aggregate bond index that we always seem to talk about is actually still sitting negative at 1.68%. So this week, we are going to jump into retirement income. And for those of you who've been listening to the show for quite a while, a few years ago, I decided to kind of name the process that we use at work. And most of you who've been listening to the show for quite a while know that I've been in the industry nearly 20 years at this point, and I've seen a lot of common themes in retirement planning. And one of the common themes that I always see are certain elements of financial planning that I feel are really important and critical to family success during retirement. And so ultimately what I ended up doing it was identifying those pillars and then ended up trademarking the Rite Retirement name because I feel like retirement income, that's the R in retirement in the right word, RITE. I is for investments, and under that, you have insurance as well. T is obviously for taxes, and the E is for estate and legacy planning. So I feel like those are the main 4 pillars that individuals and families should address as they are working their way through retirement. And if those 4 pillars are addressed, I feel like there's a strong possibility that they're going to have a retirement that is successful to them, and really one where they can relax and really just enjoy the last years that you have here, by yourself or with your spouse or whomever you're with. So always remember, when it comes to retirement, there is no retirement without income. So you must figure out how to design a sustainable income stream that's going to provide for you, your family, for the remainder of your life. And one of those areas is Social Security, and that'll be the first topic that we're going to jump into. But we're going to cover Social Security, pensions, annuities, and a couple of non-guaranteed forms of income, which are like rental income, dividends, or just mainly withdrawing from a portfolio. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to jump into a few stories. Over the past several weeks, and actually one of these stories is related to the last couple of years, we've met with people that have taken the time to come in to sit down with us, and we've been able to uncover some things. So I'd like to start off by talking about a single female individual that came in. This has probably been about a month ago, and I talked about it in detail on one of the previous shows. And basically she came in, she was divorced. She had 2 ex-husbands. And during the discovery process and meeting with her, I continued to ask questions and probe around. And she let me know that the first ex-husband died. Now she's been divorced from him for a number of years at this point. And she had just been to a local Huntsville advisory firm. So she had just been in and met with advisors. I guess they call themselves wealth managers. And these wealth managers, because of the oversight, had she not come in to see me, probably or had potentially would have cost her a potential 6-figure oversight. Now, because she's divorced, she's been divorced twice, and the first one passed away, she has the option to claim off of her first ex-husband who is now deceased. And I know that seems like a big spider web of, wow, that's pretty complex. The Social Security can be complex depending on your situation. So we were able to work with her and show her how she could claim off her deceased first ex and actually defer hers. So we've had a situation where, somebody came in, they'd already been to somebody, and I believe this individual was a referral to our firm. And because of that, we were able to really enhance her life just by saying, hey, did you know these rules exist? Now, the second story I want to personally share, then Graham's got a wild one. This client has been working with me probably about 2.5, 3 years at this point. And I say working with me, he's been meeting with me on and off. And he was a business owner, and he said, I'm going to sell my business. And when I do, I'm going to call you back. And, anytime you hear that, you're like, are they really going to call back? I mean, how many times have I heard that in my life as a business owner? I can tell you a lot. And then sometimes they never call back. So this individual did what he said he was going to do. He sold his business. He came back in to see me, and he wanted something safe safe and guaranteed for a portion of his money. So as I always do, we do data collection during our discovery session. So he'd been through a discovery session, and then we put him back through some data collection as well. And when his wife was there with him, I noticed her Social Security was pretty small. And I asked some questions, and the response was, well, she didn't work a whole lot. She stayed home and didn't really work a whole lot and didn't contribute a whole lot. I said, okay, it still seems really, really small. So then I just asked the question. I said, are you collecting spousal? Meaning, are you collecting additional off your husband who's already filed? And the question was, what is that? So she was already collecting her Social Security. He had filed a few months back. And what I told him to do was just contact Social Security, because I believe that she could call and say that, hey, now that my husband has started his Social Security and mine was really small because I didn't work a whole lot and I didn't pay a whole lot into the system, am I due any spousal? So again, just it's worth, coming in, taking the time to sit down and kind of understand this. Graham, you've got a wild story, so I'm going to hand it over to you, and I'd like for you to tell the listeners what you ran into in the past few weeks.
Yeah, and just to preface this wasn't somebody like that actually came into the office. This was a news story that I saw, but I think it could be one of those things that, obviously, I think maybe we'll never see this happen ever again, but it's still a good reminder to, be following your Social Security amounts over the years and making sure you got your ducks in a row before retirement. It's a story from Florida, and this article was done by their local news station. So there was a guy named Jimmy, and he is about 66 years old today. And a couple of years ago, he went to file for his Social Security amount. I don't know how old he was at the time. And this was back in 2020, I believe he said. So I guess he went ahead and was going to go file when he was 62. And they told him that his benefits would start in a couple of weeks, and they didn't start. And so he reached back out again, and they sent him a letter that said, we just can't prove that you're a U.S. citizen. And he was like, what? I have a Social Security card. I have a driver's license here. I have a passport. I've been voting for 40 years in elections. And they were like, well, actually, you're not a citizen. So he comes to find out, well, he knew that he was born in Canada and moved here when he was 2 years old, but he did not know that he never got citizenship after he moved here. So his father was American. His mother was Canadian. So he's been in this fight now with Social Security for, I guess, about 4 years trying to get his benefits, because technically he did pay into Social Security for 40, 50 years of working and is not getting anything back out of that. So, again, I don't think this is going to apply to a ton of people, but I think it is a good reminder that, you're never going to know what life throws at you. And, it's just smart to have a plan, have a backup plan, and make sure you're really prepared for retirement in case something wild happens.
Yeah, Graham, and this is why I guess we got to do a little bit better job at show prep. For some reason, I thought that was somebody who actually came in to see you, so I apologize for that. I'm sitting here thinking that person came in, but obviously very wrong there.
Oh yeah, I'm glad I didn't have to break that news to somebody.
Right, Richard, you were
Hey, so
here.
Chris, are you concerned at all about how many people out there are in the same situation as that client you referenced earlier?
Oh, for sure. That's why I wanted to bring it up on the air, because the deal here, and that's a really good question to bring up extra emphasis to it, is this when this situation happened. So this the wife started claiming first, and that was and then the husband started claiming. So when that situation happens, the spouse has to call back, the lower earning spouse, and has to do another filing request. I believe it's called deemed filing, and they will be paid up to half of what their husband's FRA. And that's big picture. I'm not going to get granular on this episode about how all of that works, but essentially, if say your spouse earns, let's say your spouse earns $3,000. Theoretically, if you both waited until FRA, you would be eligible for $1,500, essentially the lower earning spouse. And the way that works is you would file and you would receive your benefit first. So if say the lower earning spouse is at $700, well, the spousal portion would be $800. So you'd get paid your benefit first, and then you'd be paid the spousal, which takes it up to $1,500, which is half of $3,000. In this case, she had already filed, so she has to call back and kind of request that. So again, if you're joining the show kind of halfway through, this is the Rocket City Retirement Show. I'm Cris Wallace, certified financial planner, WG Financial Group here in Huntsville. If you'd like to give us a call for your discovery session, you can do that at 256-937-2010. Again, the number is 256-937-2010. We'd love to sit down with you and actually go over some of these things to make sure that you're not missing anything in your retirement plan. Again, these individuals who called in and met with us, and like I mentioned, one of them had been meeting with us for multiple years now. They ended up benefiting from the discovery session because we do a deeper dive, and it's more of a deeper dive than what most people personally know how to do. And even if you don't become a client, here's the deal. Even if you don't become a client, or even if you end up working with somebody else, we feel like our meetings are incredibly valuable to those who take the time to meet with us. So if you want to give us a call and set that up, you can do that, 256-937-2010. So, all right, I want to roll into kind of the history of Social Security. And then Richard, Graham, I want to get some input from you guys. But we have Social Security was signed into law back in 1935 by President Roosevelt. And I was in the car with my son, and I thought it was kind of funny. He was asking me about this, and Christian is actually training to be an advisor when he's done with school. So he's kind of interning with us, and he was asking me about Social Security and when did it go into effect, and trying to remember this on the fly in the car with my son, popping questions at me. And I said, I think it was 1935, and I think it was President Roosevelt. So I said, you're going to fact check me. So that's when it was signed into law. The original intent of Social Security, just so everybody knows, the original intent was to replace somewhere around 40% of your income. But there is a large number of people today who are using it for much more than 40%. But all that being said, we feel like Social Security is a big, big part of a family decision. So when we go back to the R in retirement income, Social Security being one of those, we feel like Social Security is a big deal. And Richard, I want to ask you to kind of talk about why the first 1 to 7 years of retirement are incredibly important when it comes to stability.
Yeah, Chris, that's a great question. And it goes back to what you and I have discussed previously. That first 1 to 7 years really is the danger zone about what we discussed on that 4% withdrawal rate show. That if you wanted to check out and you missed it, you can go back to our podcast on Apple Music or Spotify. But in that show, we talked about how if the market has a sharp decrease at the beginning, the issue that people run into is their spending is not that flexible. And so you really have to get through that first almost decade until you know that until the market has gone up again. Historically, after about a 10-year period, the market has very, very rarely been negative overall. And so if you can get through that first 10-year period, then you're actually able to start, then we feel more confident that your withdrawal plan will be successful.
Yeah. So it's kind of like if you look at it in terms of sports, we think the last 5 to 7 of your working years and the first 7 to 10 of your retirement years are your critical zone. A lot of people call that the red zone. I look at it. I watch a lot of football, as the listeners know. So take whatever sport or story you want to plug in here, but you've got Alabama or Auburn, and they're driving and they're on the 5-yard line and they're about to score a touchdown to win the game. The worst thing you want to do is fumble, and that's the same type of thing when you're working with your retirement time horizon. We're looking at that first 7 to 10 years, and you don't want to fumble in those first 7 to 10 years, because it can really have a big negative impact on your retirement plan long term. Graham, I want to ask you a question. You have probably, Levi's catching up with you, but you have probably to date sat in more meetings with anybody than me. You've heard me talk about Social Security. You've been on the air with me now for, I don't know, almost a year at this point.
I think about a year exactly.
It was about a year. Okay.
Somewhere. So you missed our first anniversary on the radio together.
I did. I feel awful about that. But yeah, so when it comes to Social Security, and then Richard, we'll get your thoughts as well. We've seen it really, really impact a retirement plan. And I'd like for you just to speak on how important it is when it comes to a retirement plan, Graham.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing I always find about Social Security in the retirement plan is, the way that we're running a lot of plans. We have a lot of goals in there. There's obviously living expenses that people need to fund, as well as travel and healthcare and things like that. And you guys are totally right what you were talking about a second ago, how those first couple of years of retirement, especially if you're retiring a little bit younger, that'll also, put a little bit more stress too. Those are kind of the really pivotal years where sometimes the withdrawal rate will look a little bit higher, and it, might see a little bit of dip in the portfolio value because maybe you're pulling off of it more heavily. And you can really start to see the stabilization of the plan once Social Security kicks in, especially for both spouses, because as we were talking about a minute ago, for a married couple, there's a pretty good chance, as long as you're both eligible, you're going to get, as the lower income spouse, at least half of what the higher income spouse is. And obviously that's contingent on a couple other things, but from a high level perspective, it'll be around that. So for most people, that's a pretty large part of their guaranteed income. And for a lot of people, an increasing amount of people, it's their only amount of guaranteed income. Mm-hmm. So you'll see those first couple of years of the plan where we're just pulling off the portfolio. And there's a good chance, with us running more conservative returns and pulling a little bit more heavily to maybe spend a little bit more earlier, you might see a little bit of a portfolio drop in those first couple of years, which can be scary for people. Mm-hmm. And, that's just, I think if there's nothing else that shows you the importance of Social Security, it's that, because I would say there are most plans, a vast majority would not survive at their current spending rates if Social Security was taken out. I was actually talking to one of my good friends the other day, and he was saying how his parents are kind of starting to prep for retirement. He's like, yeah, they're not sure if Social Security is going to be there. So they're just kind of prepping like it's not going to be there, and they think they can make it. And I was like, they can't. Like, I haven't seen everything, but I highly, highly doubt they're going to be able to keep up the same amount of spending, keep doing the things that they're doing, with running a reasonable return rate and not having any Social Security there. So it's incredibly pivotal. It's hard to even, overstate the importance of it. Mm-hmm. But when you look at these plans, it's really the stabilizer of all the plans. I think that would be the best word I could think of to use for it.
Yeah, and I think when you think about, you said the word stabilizer, so guaranteed income, that's hugely important. So just for the listener that's tuning into the show, Social Security is a guaranteed form of income as it stands today, and that's what we have to plan for. Plan for what we know today, and then we can make changes along the way. If you look at Social Security, it will be one of the few guaranteed inflation adjusted streams of income that you're going to have, because many of you, if you're not with the federal government or military, many of your pensions out there are not inflation adjusted. They are, just the level payment all the way through, where Social Security does have some inflation protection to it. So you can almost think of it almost like an inflation adjusted annuity. You've paid into it 6.2% since 1990 is what it's been, the FICA tax, or the Social Security tax that comes out of your check. You've paid into it the entire time, and essentially you're getting money back over time. But Richard, you said something pre-show when I asked you, was that we were talking about Social Security, and you were talking about how people, like how they treat it or how they look at it. And what was your comment that you made in pre-show?
Yeah. So, people, or at least some of the people that I work with, it seems as almost that they want to claim Social Security as early as possible, because they view it almost in a way where they're getting back at the government for taking their money via all those paychecks for the past 40 years. And while there is some truth to that, right? You can look at statistics and it says, if you had just invested that money in the S&P instead of Social Security, you would have more. Guys, that's not the reality that we live in. The reality that we live in is Social Security is a program that is going to offer guaranteed income for the rest of your life. And you can't just view it as the government is stealing from you. You have to utilize it in the way it was designed to be utilized, and play it in the best way possible for you and your family.
Yeah. So I think it is about view, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I think you can get angry if you start thinking about it, because there's things that happen, before you were born and when I was a little kid, and even before me, when it comes to how Social Security was handled by the government. But at the end of the day, I think when we're looking at a retirement plan, I think that you should look at the best way to maximize Social Security the best way possible, because we've seen mistakes. And Richard, you just mentioned that, there's the thought of, if I would just taken that money and invested in myself, I would have, X number of dollars today. But I can tell you, and Graham, you might have been in at least one of these meetings, maybe both of them, where we had the pastors come in, and in the early 80s, or sometime, I think it was the early 80s, they were able to opt out of Social Security. And when that happened, they did not take that money and invest it. So the thought process of that is, let me take that money, let me invest it. But there would have been a large part of the population that would not have done that. And I personally have met with two. There was one that mentioned an opt-in back in the 90s where they allowed you to opt back into it, and he did not opt back into it. And I can tell you, to Graham's point, that retirement plan that I worked on, this guy did not become a client. That there's not a lot of guaranteed income. There's no guaranteed income basically in the household at that point. So that creates a problem. You can rely solely on your savings. I do not fault a young person today for trying to pretend it's not going to be there, for sure. I mean, if you want to oversave and try to, assume that it may not be there, I don't see where that's a bad thing. But I think if you're 50 or older today, I don't think you have a lot to worry about. Graham, Richard, you may want to oversave, just in case. But Richard, I just want to kind of continue the conversation about that. You've built a lot of plans at the office since you've come on board. You've worked with several clients as well. I want to ask you, have you seen the claiming strategy change the score of the retirement plan? So we use a Monte Carlo probability score. Have you seen the big impacts of Social Security and how it changes the score?
Oh, 100%. Right. When you're building out plans inside of mathematical models, the only thing that we can account for to be there 100% of the time, even if the stock market goes to zero and the bond market goes to zero, is Social Security payments. And granted, I guess if the whole United States faltered, then Social Security would not be around. But let's hope that does not happen, because there's bigger problems in Social Security at that point. But if you can delay claiming Social Security, what you're doing is essentially raising the bar of the odds of you running out of money, of outliving your savings. you have a lot better chance of, even if you live until you're 120, of making sure that your savings are still there if you're pulling out a higher number from Social Security, because it is the guaranteed income source and it is not going to be impacted by market volatility.
Yeah, that's true. And you mentioned something that if Social Security goes belly up and the U.S. goes belly, I mean, we got a lot of other really, really big problems. I think the one thing that I want to, as we get near the end of this segment here, is I want to remind the listener to be positive, right? When you're planning for your retirement, you're going into what should be the glory years of your life. So I always look at life in 3 phases. You've got like phase 1 where you meet your spouse and everything's honeymoon and glorious. And then phase 2 is now you got kids and you realize how expensive they are. And as they grow up, they start ordering a lot more stuff off Amazon. They're really expensive. And then you have phase 3 where you're kind of doing phase 1 all over again. And you're basically best friends. Hopefully you're debt free. And you should have a really positive outlook as you kind of spend the rest of that time with your spouse, because the reason I bring this up is I've met with far too many people that have a very negative outlook on the United States, the very, very negative outlook on the financial situation. And believe me, I share some of those same values. I just make a conscious decision not to really dwell in that space. So I'm just trying to be positive and encouraging here that, if you feel yourself drifting into that space, find something positive to do. Pick up your Bible, read it, go play pickleball, do something positive so that you're not sitting in front of the TV or your phone buried into the sea of negativity, because that is what's out there in the media today. It's all negative, and you'll be sucked into that place really quickly. So as we wind down here, there's 3 reasons I want you to keep Social Security in front of mind as part of your guaranteed income strategy. And number 1, I mentioned a few minutes ago, it is an inflation adjusted annuity. So you get your payment, it's indexed to inflation to some degree. And I think that's really, really important, because for many of you out there, that will be the only inflation adjusted piece that you have to your guaranteed income stream. The second thing that we talk about, and I've talked about this for years at this point, and I finally hear other people on the radio starting to talk about it. I'm not trying to say that I changed their mind. I'm just trying to tell you I was ahead of the curve. It's tax efficient. At the end of the day, when you start looking at how Social Security is taxed, it's just taxed more efficient. There are some of our clients who are living only on Social Security, and they're able to do Roth conversions without having any federal income tax at all, because they've waited and done the things that they should do to Social Security to really better their income situation and also their tax situation. And then lastly, one of the big things I want you to take a look at is the spousal protection aspect. So Social Security is, the high income earner is the Social Security amount that is going to be kept if a spouse passes away. So let's just say husband and wife, husband has the highest Social Security. They collected the wife early, her Social Security is less. If the husband dies, they lose hers, or she loses hers, and then she'll keep his. If she passes away, then hers is gone and he keeps his. So the higher income earner is important in a family situation. The reason it's very important, again, is for that low income earner, especially if you're a little bit older, say your husband 4, 5, 6 years older. The statistical odds of you passing away are a lot more likely. And therefore, I think if you're the high income earner, you have to think in terms of my wife's protection at that point. Or if it's the other way around, the wife is a high income earner, same situation. You have to think of in terms of spousal protection. So inflation adjusted annuity, tax efficiency, spousal protection. If you would like to come in and sit down and go over some of this with us in what we call a discovery session, all you got to do is call 256-937-2010, and we'll have these conversations and more as we go through our process. 256-937-2010.
Get the most out of your retirement with WG Financial Group's comprehensive investment and wealth management services. While we don't fully endorse active investment management, we believe in regular portfolio adjustments to potentially achieve better returns for our clients. Schedule a meeting today by calling 256-937-2010. That's 256-937-2010.
Wait. Now, wait a little longer. Great. You may have just increased your lifetime income by tens of thousands of dollars. That's how Social Security can work for you. The longer you wait, the more money you may get. Deciding when to start taking your Social Security benefits is one of the most important retirement decisions you'll make. Cris Wallace and the team at WG Financial Group can show you the options and help make the right decision for you and your situation. Call them today, 256-937-2010. You spent decades paying in. Optimize what comes out. Cris Wallace and the WG Financial Group team can help you squeeze every penny out of your Social Security benefits. Don't wait any longer. Call now, 256-937-2010. That's 256-937-2010. Investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Firm is not affiliated with the U.S. government.
Don't panic in uncertain market times. Let Cris Wallace be your trusted guide. Call Cris Wallace today at 256-937-2010 for expert advice and support. That's 256-937-2010.
All right, so now what I would like to do is I would like to move into really what I'd call like another guaranteed form of income, and that's pension plans. Now, many of you listening to the show, again, unless you're military, federal government, or you've been with a company a really long time, you don't have the luxury of having a pension plan. So a pension plan is another great form of income to add along with your Social Security. And what that ultimately does is that builds up that guaranteed foundation of income in the retirement plan. So one of the things that I want to kind of say right off the bat, I did a little bit of research before the show, and it looks like only about 15% of companies offer pension plans anymore. So it's a very, very small number of pension plans. Now, what that does is that throws the responsibility back on the employee. The employee has to save appropriately. And Graham, you talked about the people you were talking with about they're just pretending it's not going to be there in terms of Social Security. So they're saving additional money. It sounds to me they probably don't have a pension either. So
yeah, I wouldn't think so. But I mean, it's increasingly rare to see in the private sector. As you know, when you look at the articles of what jobs still offer it, it is mostly military and government at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then the FERS employees, they actually pay into their pension. It's like 4.4% that they pay into their pension, depending on when you were hired, of course. But if you're being hired today, you're going to pay 4.4% into your pension plan to be able to have that. So it's, you're paying 6.2 into Social Security and 4.4 into your first pension plan. You're over 10% in payroll deduct before you see, your paycheck there. But it does create a stream of income for your retirement.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does. And, again, kind of on the Social Security or pension conversation of talking about, taking money to then have just an organization or government save it for you. I think it is really necessary because, again, we do not have the willpower, I don't think, most of us as individuals to go ahead and say, oh, I'm going to put that 10% aside total and kind of let it act as my pension. Some of us do, but that would be, over and above the other savings we're already doing into our retirement plan. So it ends up being kind of a lot. So I think out of sight, out of mind, it can be kind of good sometimes.
Yeah, it can be. And I can, again, speak from personal experience. I did not have the discipline early on. I didn't. And I see mirror images of myself from time to time when people come in that are making the changes, the necessary changes later in life. It's just you're behind at that point. So that pension, one of the big advantages of pensions is that you have that stable source of income. And as Richard, I think you kind of noted, and we were talking about Social Security, like with a pension, you don't have to worry about the volatility. It's income. It's there. It's going to be there like a paycheck. And I think that's really important as you transition into retirement. If you're lucky enough to have a pension and you're lucky enough to have Social Security, chances are probably really good that you're going to cover the bulk of your income needs with those two sources.
Oh, absolutely. And, Chris, one of the kind of the lump sum pension versus actually receiving the pension on a month-to-month basis, I think one of the things that some people don't think about is they're using a mathematical equation to where taking the lump sum is better than receiving the monthly or annual distributions outside of the pension, where in reality, and it's hard for me to say this, but it's almost like people want to take all of their money with them after they've passed away. And in reality, you should just be structuring your retirement income situation to meet your retirement goals. It's not always a race to make as much money as possible in that decision. It should be a race to be comfortable in retirement.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's actually one of the things I've said to people and prospects and even clients as they sat down with me is, you're there. Like, you've already won the race. Like, you don't need to continue sprinting at this point. You literally have the ability to kind of kick it back, put it on cruise, and be comfortable. Because what I have found, and this kind of leads into kind of what you're talking about, is if you're constantly trying to win that return race, that's going to create a lot of stress, a lot of additional stress that's maybe not needed. And there's been plenty of studies out there that show that the more guaranteed income that is coming into the house, the more stable the retirement plan is. And there's a lot of people, like, here's kind of the deal. We're going to talk about annuities in a minute, but if you ask the vast majority of people out there today, like if we just did Man on the Street and we went out into the city of Huntsville with a microphone and we just ask, pre-retirees today, would you like to have a pension? The vast majority of them would say absolutely. Most people want a pension to have that guaranteed income because most of the individuals and families remember their parents and their income stream and how comfortable their retirement looked like. Well, guess what? Today, in my generation and the generation a few years above me and definitely below me, guess what? Our retirement ain't going to look like theirs. Like, we're not going to have that very large pension in addition to Social Security. We're going to have that Social Security in addition to whatever we save for retirement. And at times, those pension plans are really, really important. So, Richard, back to what you were just saying, taking the lump sum. So there's a lot of considerations when you're taking a look at whether I should take the lump sum. Number one, again, if you take the lump sum, there's no guarantee that lump sum's not going to run out. And if you're below the age of 65 and you take a withdrawal from that pension, you're going to get hit with state taxes, whereas the tax law today in Alabama stands that if your pension is coming from a defined benefit plan, there is no state tax on it. Now, I know the recent law was changed where you can take out of an IRA, a certain amount of it out of an IRA in the state of Alabama without having federal or state tax on it, But for all the reasons for taxation from a state perspective below the age of 65, the pension really, really works out well. And it also, again, if you choose the survivorship option, protects, here again, the spouse, which is really, really important because we've seen, like with the federal government, if you're a FERS employee, your federal pension, at best case is 50%, survivor at that point. So automatically, if you pass away and you have a FERS pension, your spouse gets 50% of it. That's a 50% income loss right there. There's also going to be that Social Security loss. So, let's just say you have a $4,000 FERS pension, you die, $2,000 goes to the spouse. Let's say the spouse has $1,500 in Social Security and she's the low income earner. That's gone too. That's a pretty steep income loss in retirement. Thinking about whether or not to take that lump sum, and then also thinking about from that spousal protection standpoint, because Richard, you've probably met with enough people to kind of understand this. Some people say they can do better. Like, I can do better. If I take the lump sum, I can do better.
Oh, absolutely. And, in 95% of the cases, right, that might be the case. It might be a better mathematical value if you do a straight line analysis of taking the lump sum, but you're forgoing the safety net aspect of it that a pension and Social Security is really great for.
Yeah, and you're also foregoing the emotional battle because most people, I would say most people, I don't know if it's most people, but I would say a lot of people struggle with keeping their hands off their investments. So, think about 2022, times get volatile and people, you want to go to cash or, you think what's going on. Like right now, there's a lot of listeners listening to the show today. Richard Graham, you guys know this. We sit down with them at the office who think like, how in the world can we be in this type of economy or this market condition where the market continues to go up? I don't understand it. And that's the comment that I hear quite a bit is I don't understand what's going on. And so what do? You go with what your bias leans towards. And oftentimes that's kind of a bad decision in a lot of cases because we believe in having people, stay in, invested. Richard, I want to ask you about guaranteed income in the retirement plan. So when we run these mathematical model simulations, Monte Carlos, for the clients as we're building out these retirement plans, having the guaranteed income helps, right? I mean, you've seen it time and time again where you can run it both ways. You can run it with just investments and take into account the volatility of the investments, and then, sit a side by side up with guaranteed income with an extra pension in there, and it just looks completely different.
Oh, without a doubt. I think in an ideal world, to maximize the growth potential that you have inside of your portfolio, but also the safety net side of the guaranteed income side, I think in an ideal world, you have about 80 to 90% of your monthly expenses covered by a guaranteed income source, whether that's Social Security, military pension, FERS pension, disability, annuity payments, those are really the main guaranteed income sources that are available to most people. But if you have about 80 to 90% of your monthly expenses covered, then your investment portfolio can provide the growth you're looking for, can also provide the fluff that you want, right? You want the new car. Okay, well, we can go get into your investment portfolio and get the car. And it also allows you, if the market goes south, it still allows you to live off of your needed monthly expenses with your guaranteed income sources. And you're just understand that, okay, I don't need that new car this month or this year because the stock market is down 25%. It creates kind of a balance, in my opinion.
It does. And it comes at a cost. I mean, again, I think going back to what you said earlier about Social Security, I think it's about the game that people play. I think Graham said it best on a previous show. People treat Social Security like a game. Well, if you have the option to take a lump sum pension, a little of that is kind of gaminess in your head in a sense, because you're thinking you're going to take the pension and really outdo what the annuity is going to provide. But again, when you not the annuity, the pension, and basically with that pension, it's on autopilot. Like, you don't have to think. It's just money that shows up every single month in your bank account. And I find that people that have, and studies show this too, it's not just what I've seen for the last 20 years. The studies are showing this too. People that have more guaranteed income they're much more calm because they have all of their basic needs covered with the guaranteed income. And, I think that plays really into your emotional sanity, to the advantage of your emotional sanity, meaning it's going to keep you a lot more emotionally sane. So if you're just joining the show, partway through the show, again, this is Cris Wallace, WG Financial Group. If you would like to give us a call and set up a discovery session, you can do that at 256-937-2010. Again, the number is 256-937-2010. If you're on Facebook, you can search within Facebook, WG Financial Group 256. You can like or follow the page. We put a lot of really good information out there, a lot of videos, charts, stuff throughout the week. So I find it pretty interesting. So we always appreciate new followers there as well. And again, if you'd like to set up a time to sit down with us and kind of go over your retirement situation, you can do that by calling 256-937-2010. All right, I want to move into the A word on the air. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, he's going to talk about annuities again. Well, we are, because that's part of the retirement income, the R in the retirement income in our process here. So I'd like to talk a little bit about annuities, how I feel like they're valuable. And before we get into that, I want to say one thing, and maybe you'll remember this today, when you're listening to the show. So you've always heard, like growing up, I'm sure you guys have heard it too, Graham, Richard, that, time is your most valuable asset. And I couldn't agree more. My daughter just graduated from high school this past week. And, man, I'm going to try not to get emotional now that I'm thinking about it. So Jen put these pictures of her across the entertainment center, and it was from grade kindergarten through, senior year picture. And I looked at the senior year picture and I looked at the kindergarten picture, and I just thought, man, where did time go? Like, it just absolutely flew by. And I felt like my baby girl is now a young woman, and she is. And it just makes me think of all the things that I wish I could have done more of. And so, time is your most valuable asset in a lot of ways. But when it comes to retirement, I think it's incredibly important to do all that you can to create a longer time horizon with your investments. And today what we're talking about is really how to do that. So think about how when you were 20, 30, maybe 40 years old, and you were working and you were contributing to your 401k at that time. Let's just say you're 30 years old at this point, and you're contributing to the 401k. If I were to ask you back then what you thought about your 401k money, one, you probably would say, oh, I don't really understand it. I just put my money in like I'm supposed to. Or two, you might have said, it doesn't matter. I don't need it anyway for a long time. So I think as you go into retirement, I think it's important that you create a long investment time horizon. And you can do that by building sustainable guaranteed income streams. I also think that you have to be okay with spending some of your money. And I think that's a big barrier that a lot of people have to cross over, is to be okay with actually spending some of the money that you save, because what happens is when you go into retirement, you have this emotional feeling that you're going to run out of money. That's, you don't know when you're going to run out of life, and you're worried about running out of money before you run out of end of life. And that becomes a big emotional struggle for a lot of people. So the way to get through some of that is to create, a longer time horizon with your investments. And I can say, after working with a large number of military and federal government retirees that have those pensions in place, that have their Social Security, and they don't rely on their investments, my meetings with them are they're different. The feelings are different. The conversations are different. And I think it's important to create that long time horizon. So as part of another guaranteed source of income, if you don't have a pension, we are also in favor of looking at annuities as a guaranteed form of income. So essentially creating your own personal pension, if you will, if you don't have one, with using some of your investments. Now, again, keep in mind, like I said earlier, FERS employees right now put in 4.4% that goes towards their pension. So essentially you're doing the same thing. They're just doing it differently. And with that annuity, I think you can kind of help create that time horizon. I also feel like you can take stress off the portfolio, if I'm being honest with you. Like, you don't have to worry if the performance is not there for 1 or 2 years, because you have the guaranteed income stream. So I think that's important. Richard, I want to toss it to you for a second, because I think when you joined the firm, one of the questions you asked me specifically about annuities. So you're like, do you use annuities? And I, remembering back when we had our interview process and then we had lunch and dinner, whatever we had together, it sort of felt like to me that you didn't have a desirable taste in your mouth about them to begin with. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes. Yeah, that's an accurate statement. The way I viewed annuities before seeing them properly used were a way for certain advisors to essentially generate revenue without actually it being the best thing for the client. Granted, it was not necessarily a bad thing for the client, but there could have been better uses of those funds than to put them inside of an annuity, either due to a lockup period or just honestly not a good product.
Mm-hmm. But since joining the firm, learning how we use them in a retirement plan, not overusing them, and seeing the impacts and what it's done, because we've seen plans where the score doesn't look great at the end of the day. It doesn't, like, we're doing the plan, it doesn't look good, mainly because they don't have enough guaranteed income. Maybe a family only has Social Security, and then what you do is you slide an annuity in there for a little portion of their assets to turn on guaranteed income stream 5-7 years down the road, and all of a sudden the numbers look a lot better. You've seen that, I'm sure, time and time again far.
Oh, I mean, and I've recommended it to some people as well. It's not and I know this from now. I've been at WG for about 7 months now. It's not like every client that walks in, we're just trying to serve them an annuity on a silver platter. That's not what we want to do. No. It's for the people who, we can either go down the living off the portfolio route with a little bit of uncertainty, or we can go with the portfolio for some of it and the annuity side for some of it and have a lot more clarity on that. Because at the end of the day, an annuity is not going to make you the wealthiest person in the world, but that's not what they're designed to do. What they're designed to do is to generate guaranteed income during your retirement years.
Graham, you've seen the same thing too. I know that you've, again, I always say, you said in most meetings with me, you've seen it dramatically change plans in certain situations.
Yeah, because going back to, I'll try to tie this all back, but going back to like pensions for a second, the people that come in they're spending the most money in retirement, generally, from what I've seen. So,
Yes.
we're talking about someone that's spending $150,000 a year, $200,000 a year, things that we have seen before. That is what retirement looks like for some people. In almost every one of those situations, actually, I don't know if I can think of a situation where this wasn't the case. They had some pretty big pensions along with Social Security. And the reason for that is it just allowed them to spend a lot more. So, of course, annuities are not a one-size-fits-all thing. Out of our client base, I would not say anywhere near the majority of people actually have an income annuity in place, an annuity that's giving them a pension-like payment. It's not over 50%. It's definitely less than that. But there are some people that, they want to spend in retirement, and that's a great thing. They're not necessarily trying to pass on a ton of wealth or keep accumulating a ton of wealth. They want to sustain wealth, and they want to sustain a comfortable lifestyle. And in that situation, it really works really well in a lot of those situations, especially if the person, like I've mentioned before, is retiring on the younger side, and we're going to have to fill a lot of years of income. Because let's say you're retiring at 55, we're probably going to run your plan out right around 95 years old, 90, 95. We're talking 40 years of retirement. I mean, that's a long time to sustain spending, regardless of if, it maybe does trickle down a little bit over the years. People might not spend as much at 57 as they do at 87, but, maybe you'll want to. And that's kind of how we're planning it out in a lot of those cases. So yeah, there's some situations where it has worked really well for people, but I think going back to the pension, if you want to spend really heavily, you're going to need some income in most situations.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what I'll do here is I'll give a numerical example the best I can over the air. So ended up working with a single female a few months ago, and, she came in, we ran her plan, and it was on the fence. Let's just say that. And it wasn't quite where I thought it needed to be. So in looking at her situation, I looked at an old account that she had sitting as an IRA, and it was basically $175,000. That's what the amount was. And I ended up looking at that as a potential annuity solution. And here's what I came up with. So essentially, we deposit $175,000, and in 4 years, when she retires, she can start income. Now, why is this important? Okay. So first of all, single female, she got 4 years left before she retires. In the next 4 years, in my opinion, she can't take a lot of big risk with her investments. I don't think it's a good idea. And she's close enough to the finish line at this point where now we've got to start looking at certainties. Like, where can we get certain guaranteed income? I'm close enough now where I need my retirement plan to be really, really clear, as I'm only 4 years out. So 175 goes in the fourth year. When she retires, she can take $17,705 for the rest of her life. So as long as she draws a breath, she's going to get that payment. And some of you might be sitting out there saying, oh, but just leave it in the market. The market's going gangbusters, and, it'll grow and, achieve a better growth rate in the market. Here's what that cash would need to do. If she took that same amount of money that we can put in the annuity, and we did, and she can get $17,705 in 4 years. If she left that money in the market, she'd have to be ultra aggressive for number one. She's 4 years away from retirement, and just take a wild stab. I'm just going to ask you and Richard to give me your best figure in order to just do the 4% rule. So what would I need? What would she need that amount of money to grow to in order to just do the 4% rule, meaning pull off that $17,500? And it's not guaranteed. Just give me your best guess, Graham, on what you think that 175 would need to grow to
pull 4%.
Yeah, to pull 4% to get that 17.
Don't want to do this math in my head too fast.
Just give me your best guess.
I don't know. We're probably looking over $1 million.
Oh, no, you're way high.
I'm way high.
You're way high. You did the Cris Wallace.
It's about 480 or 460.
Really close, Richard. I would expect you to do it, being the math wizard that you are. So
I did that totally backwards.
This, and I caught you off guard. So, but again, this is why we do the show. It's fun to do this stuff, kind of live and fun. All right. So she would need that $175,000 to grow to $442,000. It's actually $442,625 just to be able to pull off 4%. Which is a crazy amount of growth inside of 4 years. So you would need that money in 4 years to more than double, which I think is highly, highly unlikely. So in this situation, this is one of those situations, especially for this single female, where she's this close and she's saved her assets and rebuilt her life after a divorce. And this was an excellent way for her to guarantee herself out $17,705 for the rest of her life. Now, she still has her other investments. Guess what? What this does, what the annuity has done, is create what I call that time horizon. So for her, it's for the rest of her investments, it don't matter in the next 4 years, because she went ahead and locked up some money to say, all right, I'm going to take this amount of money, this percentage of my portfolio, and I'm going to guarantee myself a certain amount of money at a certain age. And therefore, again, the rest of her investments can actually be a little bit more aggressive if she chooses to do so, because she lengthened her investment time horizon by making an investment into another piece of guaranteed income. And that's kind of what I was, talking about when we opened the segment about time being, one of our biggest assets, especially when it comes to investments. We should do all that we can to increase our investment time horizon, because I think that helps. It helps you keep your hands off your investments. It keeps you from looking at the accounts every single day, and it keeps you focused on what you should be focused on in retirement, which is enjoying it and not spending time kind of locked up on the TV. So, Richard, that I don't know if you did that math in your head or if you had a calculator over there, but either way,
it's all in the head. Growing up on the way to baseball practices, my dad would ask me mental math questions, and if I got them wrong, he would stop the car until I got it right. So,
really,
yeah, I was late to one game, but I don't want to talk about that. But
so we owe it to your dad. I mean,
we do.
Some credit there.
We owe it to my dad for my mental math abilities.
Check it out. I did not know that. So new stuff every week on the show. So again, we're not advocating. Again, I just kind of want to wrap this up as we get near the end of the show. We're not advocating that everybody needs an annuity. That is not at all what we're saying. But what I am saying is that for certain people in certain situations, I think it makes sense. And I think it makes sense, if you're looking at it to cover like your basic living expenses, because think of it like your job income, what you have coming in today. If you're still working, you don't worry about life because you have your job income, coming into your bank account every other week or every week or however often you're paid. This is really no different. And the last thing that I'll mention as we wrap up here, if you're doing one of these and you've got it coming in combination with your Social Security or some other form of payment, I would structure your payments throughout the month. So Social Security's set when it comes in. It's done. It's going to come in for some of you at the first of the month. You may want to have like your annuity payment come in around the middle of the month so that it feels like you're getting paychecks again, like you're working. Because a lot of what you'll find out when you transition into retirement is it's a lot about feeling and how you feel. And the more you can replicate how you feel during your working years, the more comfortable things will be, as you go through retirement. So again, that's the end of the show. That's the R in the Rite Retirement process. We didn't get into the non-guaranteed income portions of it, so maybe we'll do that on another show, guys. But good show with everybody. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Thanks to all the listeners. And if you'd like to call in and set up a discovery session, you can do that by calling 256-937-2010. Again, the number is 256-937-2010. Hope everybody has an awesome and blessed week, and remember to serve every person in every situation with a servant heart.
A Roth conversion is a taxable event and may have several tax-related consequences. Be sure to consult with a qualified tax advisor before making any decisions regarding your IRA.
Investment advisory products and services made available through AE Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Insurance products are offered through the insurance business WG Insurance Services. WG Financial Group is an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through AE Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment investment advisor. AEWM does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by WG Insurance Services are not subject to investment advisor requirements. AEWM and WG Insurance Services are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. WG Financial Group is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by WG Financial Group. This radio show is a paid placement.